We're going to finish today the 4th chapter of Eruvin. And just in celebrating reaching the end of it, I just want to remind us about the beginning of it and about the middle of it. We began, Mishahotzihu goyimu ruach ra'a, someone whom Gentiles or an evil spirit have taken out of the Tchum. And we learned that he has no more than 4 amot in any direction. He can walk no more than 4 amot in any direction because he's been taken outside. But he's been taken outside not of his own free will. And so if they bring him back, it's as if he never came out. Hechsiruhu ki'ilu lo yatsa. If they bring him back, or if he wanders back, this is someone mentally in distress, he's just as if he'd never left it. That was the first case we looked at the beginning of the chapter. And then yesterday we talked about someone who's on a journey. Someone who's on a journey, it became dark. So Shabbat comes and he's on the journey. And he sees a tree or a fence, and he said, let my Shabbat place be under it. And we learned that actually if he points precisely to the place, so precisely to the root, for example, of the tree, he can establish his Shabbat place there, and then he can have 2,000 amot all around. So that's where we got to so far. Now, let's jump into Mishnah 10 and let's close the perek. You can see it's this. I mean, Mishnah is poetry, and you can see we're repeating this theme. Mishi yatsa laderech, Mishi yatsa lelech, Mishi yatsa lelech be'ir. She me'arvin ba. Someone went out to a town that was being connected, or they were connecting. Really, Eruvin ba is they were connecting with an eruv. This is the verb to make an eruv. V'hechsiro chavero, but he was returned home by his friend. So he goes out to a town that was where they were trying to make an eruv, and he's returned by his friend. This is really almost I would say this is completely incomprehensible without commentators and Gemara. But it seems that he is going out. He's not just going out to a town which was being connected by an eruv. He's going to make the eruv. He's holding the bread. Look, here's a diagram of it down below. Look, let's say he comes from town 1, and there are 2,000 amot in each direction. He needs to place the eruv exactly on the edge of the tchum. And then the people in the town can make it to town 2, which also has 2,000 amot in each direction. In other words, he can join up between the 2 towns. That's what he's trying to do. And then the people of each town can walk backwards and forwards on Shabbat. But the Mishnah says, Hechziro chavero, his friend sent him back. This feels a little bit like the person who went out to do a mitzvah and then he was told there was no need for it anymore. Someone tells him, oh no, don't worry, I've already set up the eruv. But he hasn't. He's turned back unintentionally, and as a result, there is no eruv. There's no eruv that Shabbat between the 2 towns. What is the situation? Well, as always, there are 2 opinions. Let's start with the Mishnah, the first opinion of the Mishnah. Hu mutar lelech v'chol bnei ha'ir asurin. He himself can go, and all the other townspeople are forbidden. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda, remember we learned yesterday that someone who was out in the field and said, let my Shabbat place be in a specific place, say at the root of the tree, he establishes his Shabbat place there. Rabbi Yehuda seems to think that this person has indeed established his Shabbat place by his intention to go there, even though he didn't actually make it. We talked yesterday about how important the intention is. So he's established it by intention. But of course, all the other people in the town, they meant to establish it via the bread. Yeah, buy the bread that was going to be put there, and that's failed. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, he can walk backwards and forwards between the two towns, but they cannot. Rabbi Meir will disagree. Rabbi Meir says, Rabbi Meir Omer, Kol shehu yachol arev velo arev, harezeh chamar gamal. Anyone who's able to prepare an eruv and does not. This is the case, really, because he could have done it. He could have gone all the way to the place, but his friend turned him back. Anyone who's able to prepare an eruv and does not is like someone who is both a donkey driver and a camel driver. And remember, we learned about the donkey driver and the camel driver in, I think, the last chapter. And we learned that one of the features of a camel is that you need to lead it. You can only lead a camel. You don't drive a camel. But the thing about a donkey is you have to drive it from behind. The Mishnah, by the way, knows you have to drive a donkey from behind. And there are other stories about driving donkeys from behind in the Gemara. You got to drive a donkey from behind. So if you have a donkey and a camel, you're in a difficult situation. You always have to stand in front of the camel and behind the donkey. You can have to stand between the camel and the donkey, or you can't get anywhere. You have to stand between them. And Rabbi Meir seems to be getting at this when he says this person is like a donkey driver and someone who's both. Hareze chamar gamal. It's like a donkey camel driver. He's saying he's caught between the two. And look, here's the picture of being caught between the two. Look, he intended to make his eruv around where the red dot is, around the red dot, where the eruv should have been between the two towns. Town 2 is on his right. He came from town 1 on the left. Now, maybe his Shabbat station is in town 1, in which case he can go for 2,000 amot around town 1. Maybe his Shabbat station is around the red dot where he intended to put the bread, but didn't. We don't know which one is effective. We don't know. And according to Rabbi Meir, because we don't know, he needs to stick in the space between the two. In the overlap of the two circles. Like the driver who's between the camel and the donkey, and he can't escape one animal or the other. This person is stuck between those two central points. That's Rabbi Meir and the donkey and the camel. Let's go on. Because that situation dealt with someone who went out on purpose. What if he went out, maybe he's not paying attention. This is someone who didn't go out before Shabbat to prepare, but he went out on Shabbat. So he's going out on Shabbat. He doesn't care about the tchum. At least that's the way the Bar Tanura puts it. This guy doesn't care about the limit. And he's going to be fined. Someone went out beyond the Shabbat limit, afilu amah achat, even just by 1 cubit, by 18 inches. Lo yikanes. He can't re-enter. He's now stuck in his 4 cubits. He can't, I guess he could re-enter by 3 cubits, but he can't do anything else. He's no longer part of the town when he comes back. He's just stuck in his 4 cubits. Now, Rabbi Eliezer will be a little bit delicate. Rabbi Eliezer says, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Shtaim yikanes. 2 cubits he may re-enter, shalosh lo yikanes. Remember, Rabbi Eliezer has this peculiar view of the 4 cubits around a person. Let me go back to the Rabbi Eliezer's diagram. Rabbi Eliezer says if you're stuck out there in the middle of the field, rather than having 4 amot in each direction, you have 2 in each direction. And that's because Rabbi Eliezer believes that a person himself takes 4 amot, 2 in each. So for Rabbi Eliezer, these 2 amot in each direction are personal. And so he will say, with the situation of someone who's gone out he's gone out, he's neglected to keep the tchum, and he's gone out, but just by one amah. Rabbi Eliezer will say, okay, but part of him is still inside the tchum. He's only out by 2 cubits or less than 2 cubits. Well, part of him is still inside the tchum, so he can go back. But if he goes more than 2 cubits, shalosh lo yikanes, 3 cubits, he may not re-enter. Like the first opinion. Similarly, someone he was outside the tchum and it got dark. He was overtaken by dark outside the tchum. Again, this is not someone who has the presence of mind or the knowledge or the care and attention to say, this will be my Shabbat station. I've got 2,000 amot. He doesn't do anything. He's just outside and he does nothing. Afilu ama achat lo yikanes. He can't get back inside the town, at least not for halachic purposes. He has no Shabbat space at all. Now, Rabbi Shimon is going to be lenient, by the way. Rabbi Shimon says, Afilu 15 amot yikanes. Even 15 amot, he can come back in. She'ein hamashochot mumatzin et amidot mipnei hatoen. Because the people who measure actually don't measure that accurately. They don't measure to within 15 amot. And they're a little bit conservative when they lay out the boundaries of the town just in order to take care of people who err. And I brought you the Rambam on Rabbi Eliezer, but also he finishes by saying the halacha does not go like Rabbi Eliezer or Rabbi Shimon. Ve'ein halacha k'Rabbi Eliezer ve'lo k'Rabbi Shimon. Tomorrow, we will learn about the surveyors. I shouldn't say tomorrow. When we learn the next Mishnah, which is next week, we will learn about how they survey the city and how they define its bounds. But we will close here for today.